Good morning, everybody.
I'm so nervous all of a sudden.
Hello, everyone. I'm sure you've done a lot bigger things to be nervous about than.
These days, not so much.
Yeah, right. It's nice to see you all. Welcome. Hi, Maya. Get to see you all the time. Lucky us. Hi, Kate. Yay.
Oh, there's so many people I
Becca
recognize
and
up here. It's amazing. Oh, it's like
Diane. Nice to see you.
this is your
Alan.
life.
Great to see you, Alan. And Liz. Hey, guys. Wonderful. Yeah, say hi in the chat if you can. Let us know where you're calling in from so we can all connect and get to know each other a little bit. For those of you who are new to Invested Musician, or this is one of your first events, welcome. My name is Rupal. I'm one of the co-founders here, along with Andrew.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
So we're really excited to put on this workshop for 3 days. We've got a lot of exciting topics. We did a quick poll and found out what everybody wanted to hear about, and auditions, of course, was one of the big ones, as we are expecting to see quite a number of them coming up right around the corner here. And it's definitely, on our minds a lot on how we can help others prepare and get ready for this exciting time of when the pandemic is on its way out.
Yeah, so my name is Andrew, obviously, and I am the principal horn of the laphil and one of the co-founders here at Invested Musician. This morning we have the great pleasure of Robert DeMaine's presence. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, everybody.
And we're going to talk. Bob and I were just having a chat, and we thought, the two topics we would like to sort of chat about a little bit, as well as getting to the questions that you have. But the two things we wanted to talk about is what were the common things from the successes of Bob and my auditions across the years. What were the things that, the thread that tied those successes together, and then also just a little bit of insight into what is actually happening on the other side. What is the panel thinking about? What are they listening for? What does the panel find important? And I think this is what's going to be really interesting, because for me, my audition strategy started to get a lot better when I'd sat on the other side of the screen, and I'd started to see, oh, that is what I noticed as important instead of what I thought was important, when I was just as an audition taker, if that makes any sense. So I think that's going to basically be the the topic for this morning is how we can better refine our audition process, and then obviously we want to answer as many questions as we can get to in the chat. So if you have questions, then please put them in the chat. As far as recording goes, we are recording this session, and the recordings will live in the IM community and also on our Invested Musician YouTube channel. So don't worry, it will be recorded. We'll clean it up for you, make it nice and concise, cut out all of my ums and ahs, and then we'll be in good shape. So yeah, please let us know where you're coming in from. If this is your first time in Invested Musician, welcome. It's great to see so many people here this morning. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I think we should jump into it, Ripple, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's amazing to see people from all over the world, and Syria and Croatia, and obviously in the US, but Italy and Norway. So it's such an amazing thing to be able to connect in this way. So it's great to have everyone here. I wanted to just do a quick background on myself. So I'm not a musician, but I have a business degree. I have also an engineering degree and a master's in environmental science. So I work in sustainability. But I support the organization and sort of the business skills and professional skills, and a lot of organization. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a session on just email organization. Sounds really simple, but there's a ton of things you can do to get in front of it so that we don't miss important emails. So look forward to seeing you guys there tomorrow as well. And just a quick rundown of the workshop. So today is audition success right now. Then we're going to go into practice planning, and we have a template for you guys, and we're going to talk through how Andrew puts together his own practice plan template. So we're really excited about that. Tomorrow, Dennis is going to be doing flute fundamentals, but it's great for anybody in WINS. So please join that. And then I'll do, email organization tips and tricks. And then Thursday, David is going to be doing a brass technique class. And then Andrew and I are going to be doing just a general master class on what it takes. Well, actually, we're going to talk about the common mistakes we see musicians making in this industry and how to avoid them. So we're really excited. It's a couple hours for the next 3 days, but we hope to see you guys at all the events and enjoy. And Andrew, take it away.
Thank you. So, Robert DeMaine, good morning. You have won several auditions as well as, being an amazing soloist and chamber musician. So I actually had the privilege of sitting in Bob's final round of his audition of the laphil, and it was a spectacular audition. So I am as excited as anyone else to learn what the secrets were, Bob. Spill it.
Well, thank you. That was very, very generous of you to say. And good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. I think when I started getting good at taking auditions, I had a number of losses under my belt, and some close, where I'd be kind of like the bridesmaid and not the bride, that kind of situation. And I tried to ask myself, well, why am I not breaking through? The successes that I'd had always had to do with my state of mind when I walked into the room, and I really felt as though I didn't have, kind of like I didn't have any skin in the game. Like I thought, well, I'm probably not going to do very well, but I'm just going to play for me, and if they don't hire me, well, they're stupid, something like that. Having the right mindset walking into the room, and I always played my best when that happened, and LA was no exception to that. Like when I went into that final audition where I looked up at Jeff Neville, our personnel manager, this guy's about 8 feet tall, walks me into the room, and I look to my left, and there's this gigantic order of French fries on the wall. It's our organ, the concert hall organ, and I'm thinking this isn't happening. I'm not in here, and prior to that, like the day before, or was it the same day? I had been nursing an injury. My left hand was hardly working because I'd been cramming like crazy for this audition, and I really didn't think I had a chance. But so that was my third round on that particular day, and I was just going on pure adrenaline at that point. But I knew I just felt that I was going to do well, and I wasn't so concerned about the outcome of the audition as I was just how I wanted to play. And I played for me. I played for myself. I didn't play for anybody else. I played for the sheer joy of playing. And that's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but I think that when maybe even when you do that and others do it, I think that's when their best playing is done. Not when something else is attached to it, like a reward at the end.
Yeah, I totally agree. I find my audition for the laphil was the same, and I actually have to say, I had never heard the laphil play before I auditioned for the orchestra, and honestly, I didn't actually know who Gustavo Dudamel was. So it was this. I was living in Australia, and I decided, I would audition for this job, and I came out to the States. I'd been traveling to the States for many years, playing in the Colorado Music Festival in the summers. But I thought, this is a good opportunity to visit. My sole goal for the audition was to represent myself the best that I could, and to play as well as I could. Because, the thing that we can't control in auditions, there are two main things that we can't really control. One is who else turns up. So if for horn, if Radek Barbarek decides that he's going to audition for the audition that you're taking, there's not a lot you can do about that, and he's probably going to, probably play better than just about anyone that can play the horn. So, that's one thing that there's no use in worrying about the result of the audition, because you can only worry about what you can control. And the other part of it that I realized a little later on, and Bob, you probably would know this as well, definitely, is that you can't really control the mindset of the panel or what the committee is looking for. They may be after a really specific type of player, and if you're not that player, you may not win the job, but it doesn't change the fact that you can play the best that you can play, and you don't and most of the time we're not even aware of what's going on behind the screen. So committing to playing the best that you can, representing yourself the best way that you can, is your best chance to be able to to get good results. What do you think, Bob?
I don't think I could put it any better than that. I mean, that's right on the money. I think the moment you start second guessing what you think the committee might want, like there's this particular orchestra where I was like the runner-up for this job twice. Well, there were a couple of major orchestras, and I thought that they wanted a certain type of playing. So I altered my own playing and sort of sacrificed who I was in order to play perhaps, maybe a little bit more accurately, or, I didn't take as many risks. And I think I thought at the moment that would pay off, but whether or not it mattered, I didn't get the job. I mean, I was up there in the final selection of people, but ended up not being hired. And I like to imagine that it wasn't because I didn't play well, but that it was mainly because I wasn't representing myself honestly. I think that may have been a big part of why I wasn't considered at the very end. So yeah, in the looking at the other side of the footlights now, as a jury member, as a committee member, people often ask me that, well, you're looking for perfection, right? You're looking for that perfect audition. I'm like, well, what do you mean by perfect? Do you mean like not missing a single note? I mean, no, not at all. We're looking for a pattern of I think certain kinds of values. Does the person play beautifully in tune, in time, with the appropriate style? Each piece sounds a little bit different. They're able to change gears. They can play what we throw at them. If we are not thinking about technique, if we're not thinking about rhythm, thinking about how musical this person is, if they're sort of ticking all those boxes without us even thinking about it, that's the kind of person we're looking for. We're looking to hire an artist and somebody who will be easy and even fun to play with. So I don't know if you want to respond to that, Andrew. That's something that's very much on my mind as I'm listening to candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the nicest feelings in an audition when you're on the committee side is when you can put your pen or pencil down and just enjoy the performance. And if we can, as people who are taking the audition, if we can try and get into that mindset that we're giving a performance and we want to be convincing in our presentation of the excerpts or the pieces and engaging, that is going to, translate across the screen, or if there's no screen, to the panel. But the panel really just wants to just enjoy the performance. And I find when I'm on a committee, I do quite a lot of writing and I take quite a lot of notes. And so, I start, oh, nice sound, very good intonation, good articulation. And then I find after I've written the fourth thing, I'm like, I'm just listening to really good technique and it's not really engaging me. What I want to hear is someone who's just like, wow, this is a great musician. And so, a couple of things come to mind, as a member of the panel, is that, the panel and the music director is going to hire the best musician. At the end of the day, they're going to hire a great musician. And that's what they want. They want someone who's going to increase the musical, weight of the orchestra. So one thing that I keep in mind with audition preparation is that I want to make sure that I impress the most amount of people in the least amount of time. That's the goal of my audition. It's not to play perfect. It's not to make sure everything's really neat and tidy. It's just to be impressive. And of course, part of being impressive is all the things that Bob mentioned about making sure that you play with a great sound and you're in time and in tune. All of these things are super important. But if you can transcend that, that's the thing that definitely will get you the votes that you need. Because remember, you only need half of the panel to vote for you. But you need half of the panel. And the other thing to remember is in almost all auditions, the majority of the panel is made up of people who do not play your instrument. So as a horn player, for example, the maximum number of horn players that will ever be on a committee in the US is 5. And there are at least a dozen people on every committee panel, right? So if I just get the votes of the horn players, if I play in a really great horn playing way and it's very impressive, that's maybe the horn players are going to be impressed, but that's still not even half of the votes. So conversely, if I play really musically with a really commanding approach, that's going to bring more people into that sphere, so that I can actually garner more possible votes when we go. There was a really good question, Bob. I'd be interested to hear what you think about this. Is there a different mindset? Do you have a different mindset for different rounds?
No, I don't. I have I have one mindset, and it's, oh crap. That's my mindset. People are asking me, well, what's going through my mind as I'm performing? Is it the majesty of Esterhazy Palace or Schubert's Muse sitting on the shoulder? I'm like, no, half of me is trying not to screw up, and the other half of me is wondering why I'm doing this with my life. I mean, it's kind of like having to perform neurosurgery. Only there's no patient, there's no risk of anybody dying, but you have the same level of stress. So there's something absurdly funny about it. So when you make the goal your own playing, your own reward, that in itself, I think it takes a lot of the heat off. And I don't differentiate between round one, prelims all the way through finals, all the way through a trial period. I don't differentiate between that and a recital or any other kind of performance, because I have turned the audition experience into a performance. Like, it reminds me of something my son said to me. He's 16, he goes to South Pasadena High School. He said, Dad, I don't want to go back to in-person learning. It's nothing but a Zoom call, yet some of us are sitting in a class with masks on, watching a teacher still performing a Zoom call. And I said, well, how else do you expect to go from green to red? I mean, you can't do that. Red to green, you can't do that overnight. You have to ease your way into it. If you have a better way, I'm sure they'd love to hear it. And people always ask me, like, why are orchestra auditions run the way they are? And there's not enough time to spread our wings in a 3 to 5 minute presentation. Well, sorry, but that's the canvas we have to paint on. That's what we have. And we turn that into our own miniature Carnegie debut in our minds. You know what I mean by that? I mean, it's all such a mental game as much as it is just being prepared physically, technically, and how those two things intertwine. I think some experience in, perhaps falling on your butt a few times in auditions, that as long as you're awake to everything that's happening to you, you can't not improve over time. And that like when I started winning auditions, I realized it was part of a much larger process than just preparing for that one audition. So unless you get really lucky and win one audition, I think most of us have to embrace a certain aspect of it being a larger process. So I know I went a little beyond the scope of the question, but.
Oh, that's terrific, Bob. Yeah, I think another thing to keep in mind in terms of mindset between rounds, it is really difficult for us to say, okay, I'm going to have a mindset for the first round, so I'm going to play safe and in the box, and then I'm going to expand that a little bit for the semifinals and sort of be a little bit more adventurous, and then I'm just going to flip a switch and be incredibly virtuosic in the finals. This is a really, really difficult thing to do. And to be able to make those shifts. I would prefer, and I agree with Bob, I would prefer to play the best that I can from the beginning of the audition to the end. And one thing to keep in mind is that the panel normally will keep notes on each of the rounds. So I know that when we get to the finals in the LA Phil, there might be 3 rounds before the screens come down, sometimes 2, and the music director only will come in for the final round. But when I find out who the candidates are for the finals, I will go back in my notes and find out what number they were in the semifinals, what number they were in the prelims, and see, what the progression is. If I look back and I go, oh, this person played amazingly in the prelims, they were fantastic in the semifinals, and in the first round of the finals they were awesome, that's going to, and if everyone on the panel has this view, that's going to really carry weight when it comes to the discussion at the end. So being as impressive as you can in every stage is going to be to your advantage. And it's going to be easier. Having one mindset of like, this is the best Brahms symphony that I'm going to ever play, and this is the best Brahms symphony that the committee is ever going to hear, that's a pretty easy thing to translate through the rounds. Instead of starting with, here's a pretty good version of Brahms, but don't worry, because by the time I get to the finals, it's going to be amazing. That's a really difficult thing to.
I've never written in my notes, I can tell this person is totally holding back. That doesn't happen. You kind of have to lay it all out from the very beginning. I agree with you, Andrew. That's really great.
Yeah, terrific. So, just a couple of things. We talk about this in our programs at Invested Musician. We just did a course on audition training in the last couple of weeks, and one of the areas that we talk about is like what is the panel, what is going on in the panel. So, just a couple of thoughts for what's going on in the panel. Keep in mind that they have the problem. The panel has the problem. They have a vacancy in their section and in their orchestra that they really want to fill, because it means it's more complicated. As someone in my section, we've had a full horn section. In the 10 years I've been in the laphil, we've had a full horn section for a total of 1.5 years. So we've had to be, people have been playing different positions. We've had to be moving around. We've had to logistically organize the section on a weekly basis to make these things work. Having a full section makes life really easy. It's a much more simple process. So we have the problem. We want to hire someone. And so if you put yourself in the position of being the solution to that problem, that I'll fix your problem. I'll play so great that you just give me the job and then we just move on. This is a really good mindset, I think, to have. And also keep in mind that they are nervous. The committee is nervous, because whoever they select in that audition, they're going to be potentially sitting next to for the next 30 years. So they really want someone to play, and they want that person to be a nice person, and they want it to be great. And they want to hire. And I can't stress this enough, that you see a lot of like stuff written on the internet that like, oh, this such and such orchestra, they just go into this audition and they don't want to hire. Or, they're looking for perfection. Honestly, and Bob knows this 100% too. Like, we've both sat on panels where we've had to listen to 80 or 100 preliminary auditions. And then we've had to listen to 20 semi-finalists, and then 10 finalists, and then 3 super finalists. And it's hours and weeks of work. For us to get to the end of that process and not hire someone is devastating for the committee. And it's the last thing that they want to do. So in every audition, the panel really wants to hire, and they really want to get a good person. So if you can be the solution to that, if you can go in with the mentality that you're going to play great and you're going to give them a fantastic option, then the committee is going to be very happy about that. What do you think, Bob?
By the time you reach the stage where the conductor is in the room, either that's the first round of the final or the second round of the final, the super final, whatever an orchestra might call that, or if the screen comes down or whatever. By that point, the committee is rooting so hard for you, like, we want you, or any of the people who are qualified at that point. Say it might be between 3 or 2 or even 5 people. It's like, we have given the music director our blessing. Any of these people would be great. And how many times, Andrea, have we heard like it gets to that point, and then in the final round, it's just like the expectations are built up so much, and I feel it from the other side where it's like I've had to take a beta blocker listening, and not actually having to play, but listen, where they fall off the horse all of a sudden. It's not the same person. They've psyched themselves out. They've mind effed themselves. And that happens as well. And that's another thing that's a when we don't hire for whatever reason, it's not because, well, we just want to hold auditions and say, we don't want, we do this, we're elitist, we don't want to hire anybody new, we just want to appear better than we are or something. That just is so. The truth is far more mundane and routine than that. It's like we couldn't hire that person because they just kind of blew it in the finals, and maybe it's because they psyched themselves out that they only gave themselves so much in the first round or the second round or the third round. You just have to be honest the entire way through. And I wanted to add one other thing, Andrew, to what you had said about the piece being the best you can play it. I would add, I've always looked at it as, this is the last time I'm going to play this, the very last time. How am I going to make that sound? How am I going to be remembered by that one last time that I play it? And somehow that works for me. So everybody will have their own hook in that ultimate preparation. So
yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry, go on, Ripple.
Oh, I was just going to add, because you made the point about just, being the solution, and that the panel wants to obviously hire. And I just wanted to touch on sort of the business side of it as well. And as you're putting your resumes together and putting together the package that the panel or individuals are going to review to even determine if you're going to come in for the first round, there's a lot of strategy that can be put into that, and making sure your resume is written in the right way and you're showcasing the right skill set and experience. Because while that's not a performing audition, a resume is in a way kind of an audition, in the sense that you have an opportunity to showcase and demonstrate what you have to offer and how you might fit in with that, that orchestra, the organization, that group of musicians. And I think sometimes that can even be one of the hardest levels to break through, is getting that first, getting selected or getting invited. But I don't know if you wanted to talk about that at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I assume, Bob, you've been on a shortlisting panel in other orchestras, if not the laphil. I certainly haven't, and so we end up for the laphil, for a horn position, we get anywhere between 150 and 200 applicants for a position. And so we have a panel of 3 people who will receive all of the resumes, and we'll look through those resumes and make a determination as to whether we invite the person to the preliminary audition, whether we advance them to a semi-final round, or whether we suggest that they don't come. And basically the reason we don't suggest people come is because sheerly from a numbers point of view. So when you're looking through 200 resumes, you want to find out that information that's relevant as quickly as possible. So if you have a position in an orchestra, or if you have really good professional experience, that needs to be one of the first, if not the first thing that we actually see. Because then it makes the decision really easy. It's, oh, great, this person has a job in the X Symphony Orchestra. Perfect, yes, we're going to invite them. Great. Don't leave that buried further down where it can be a little bit confusing. And likewise, if you don't have an enormous amount of experience, but you've studied with some incredible teachers, or you have some really great connections to the particular orchestra that you're auditioning for, make sure that that's in a prominent position in your resume, so that one of the first things that we see. Because when you're going, and normally most of these resumes are reviewed at intermission of a concert or prior to a concert. It's like we're handed a stack of them, like a stack of 200 resumes, and we go through them, and we need to find these answers quickly. There's not a lot of we're not going to sift through and find that nugget of great information. So having it really clear, having it really direct, and laid out in a way that is easy to read, and we can get to the information quickly is a really important thing. And also from the point of view of writing a cover letter, that is also important. We don't necessarily see the cover letters, but the management side of it will see those cover letters, and that will give them an insight into that. And so then if there's a further discussion after that point, management will be able to give some insight. It also gives you an opportunity to show some of your personality, with that cover letter. So writing a clear and succinct cover letter is also something that is really worth spending a little bit of time to do. I don't know. I think we should open this up to. I have a question for you guys, and this is a question for you too, Bob. What is your normal on an audition day that maybe people feel as though is not normal? So by that I mean, like, do you have are there physical reactions, or are there mental things that go on the day of an audition or the night before an audition that you're like, oh my God, this is the most unusual thing on earth, that is actually has happened on every audition that you've won? I've got a couple in mind that I'll keep to myself for now, but if anyone has any thoughts about that, but Bob, I'd be interested to.
I mean, I'm sure it's not as different as is for any of us in this room together. I mean, I like, I'm just going to choose this as an example. This is a big cello solo in the third movement of the Brahms Second Piano Concerto, and one day, I would love to be able to really fully enjoy the second movement of that piece. The entire second movement, it's a scherzo, da 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 da, bum 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 bum, and I am just inside my head the entire time thinking, okay, calm down, Robert. Calm. The more I tell myself to calm down, the more anxious I become. But I realize also that that's an element. If you flip that over, it's excitement as well, and it depends on how well you're prepared, how well you're prepared on a local and a global level in your own playing. Those nerves are going to happen. That I can rely on those all the time. Whether I choose to use them as friend or foe, that all depends on what I've done leading up to that moment. And I mean, people might have their rituals. They might have their chamomile tea and their beta blocker, or they might need to do, hot yoga in the morning, or whatever it is that you do, or sleep up until the moment that you walk on stage. I mean, keeping in mind, you don't always have that luxury. It's for me, it's very predictable how I feel physically, and if I can use those nerves as a friend, as an ally, it all depends on my physical condition at the instrument, 100%, and then my mindset usually follows. But it's too much of a gamble. It's too much of a wild card when I'm not really bringing my A game to the situation. I don't know if that answers the question well enough, Andrew. But
no, it's great. I mean, I often felt as though, like, when and I don't know if you've had this experience, and I wonder if people in the room have either, but the day of the audition, for everyone else around you in the world that's not in that building, it's a normal day. And I used to get really angry at people who were just walking down the street looking like they were having a nice day. I'm like, don't you know this is a really stressful day for me? And then I realized that, oh yeah, that feeling is normal on an audition day, so I'm going to embrace that. And I'm going to spin it in my mind to, like, well, every audition that I've won, I've felt really stressed and felt as though this was a really unusual day. So this is good. This means I'm going to have a good day. So I started writing down things that actually are unusual for me, but very, very normal for an audition day, and started spinning it in my mind that when these things happen, it means that I'm going to have a good day, because I've won 7 auditions, and these things happened every day of those 7 auditions that I won. So this is a really good thing. And so I'm always trying to put myself in this positive mindset. So some of those things, and add to these if you guys want to in the chat. So I always have a restless night's sleep. It sounds like really like, yeah, of course you did, because you got an audition, right? Has anyone had a restless night's sleep before an audition? Hands up. Oh, terrific. Congratulations. You're all normal. So Yeah, and this is the thing, but acknowledging it is a really important thing. Instead of going, oh my goodness, like I feel I'm not sleeping well. It's like, yeah, of course I'm not sleeping well. I've got an audition. This is great. It means I'm going to play really well because I'm prepared, because that's part of my preparation. So we make these unusual things part of our preparation and make it a positive thing for our preparation for the actual day. So restless night's sleep, or I wake up early. I normally wake up at 4 o'clock. I actually have to set an alarm at 7 o'clock in the morning on an audition day to make sure I stay in bed until 7 a.m. Not so that I wake up at 7. I'm not allowed to get out of bed until the alarm goes off. And then thoughts of doubt. Anyone had those on an audition day? Any doubt? Oh, great. Worrying about the result. That's always a good one. Yeah, and then this is where, like Bob has mentioned, his tool for that is the same as my tool. The tool is, we're not going to worry about the result. The result is, I'm going to commit to playing the best that I can. So that's just every time we get this doubt, we can spin that focus to being, I'm going to focus on my performance and what I want to say. And I want to convince the panel that this is, the last time that I'm going to play this book.
Can I say add one thing, yeah. Andrew? What you're saying reminds me of Christmas Eve, and how I couldn't sleep before running downstairs to open my presents, and I'm being nervous about, am I going to get what I asked for? You could correlate that. It's the same level of anxiety before an audition. That's one realization I came to, is that well, if this is kind of the same reaction I'm having to Christmas presents, then I've got this, but you make the number one present your own outcome. You can't attach it to any result that's out of your control. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So there's some great comments in the chat about people's reactions as well. So yeah, there's one that's, I think it's a bit hard for me to eat at least something. Yeah, me too. I cannot eat on an audition day. I can't hold anything down. But I need to get energy into my body. So I make sure I load up a few days before. I have a big carbohydrate meal 2 days before. I eat the couple of days before. On the audition day, I make sure I have protein shakes and vegetable juice and like just Gatorade, things like this to give me some energy during the day. But it's part of my preparation. I make not being able to eat on the day part of my preparation. And that helps to make sure that I'm telling my brain, yeah, we've got an audition and this is going to be fine, because these are the steps that go into that process. So other things that come to mind, resignation to a negative outcome. Oh, I'm going to screw this up. Oh, I don't even know what, and a desire to leave. Oh, yeah, I think I'm just going to get on the next train and get out of there. This is all normal stuff. And once we recognize it and acknowledge it, then we can say, okay, it's fine. This is a normal audition day. What am I going to do? I'm going to stick to my plan, which is prepare really well, warm up well, and go for it and create the most musical experience that I possibly can. There was another comment about mental exercises. Yeah, so this is not something we're going to get into today. It's something we teach in the program, and we have Dinka Vlakovic, who comes in as our mental coach and works with people in the IM courses. I have a centering routine that I use before every performance and every audition. That without it, I wouldn't have my job. There's no doubt of that. So I have a routine that I go through, a process that I go through. That is really, really simple, but I have to practice it, and I have to continue to work on it. But it makes a huge amount of difference for me to just stay in the moment and to block out all of these noises that are going on. Any other experiences on audition day? Anyone have the feeling that your setup feels like totally foreign? I don't know if you have this, Bob, but when you pick up the instrument at the beginning of the day, you're like, I've never played this instrument before in my life. It's like you're
so hyper aware of everything that it's I think it's the opposite. In fact, I think it's you're so, at least from my perspective, I'm so aware that it feels foreign, that I've never gotten to that pitch of self-awareness, and that's when we know we're a little bit too much in our heads at that point. And whatever you can do to alter that state of mind, you do it. And for me, that involves only thinking about my playing and not the outcome of my playing. 100%. So.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so there's, I'm trying to read.
I'm nervous in here. I mean, I want to be able to say the right thing.
Yeah. No, and this is the great thing about audition preparation and talking to people who've won multiple auditions, is that everyone has a slightly different take on things, and it's one of the important things that we talk about in the programs is that it's really important to create a plan. It's really important to create a plan for your preparation, so for the months before, how you're going to develop your playing. I think Bob touched on this earlier. It's an audition provides you with a great opportunity to really just improve yourself. And Dennis Burikov talks about this. He says an audition is just a very expensive lesson. And I think that's a great way of approaching it too. You get so much feedback and you have the opportunity to improve so much during the course of that preparation. If you set a really good plan in place, how am I going to improve my playing over the next 4 months leading up to this audition? And then mentally, how am I going to make that preparation? How am I going to put a mental plan together so that I can deliver the best I can on the day? And then musically, how can I develop my musical knowledge of these excerpts, these pieces, as much as I can before that audition day? We think about it, we're really improving ourselves. And then we have a plan for audition on the day, and then we execute that plan. And I'm unfortunately going to tell you that those plans are never perfect. Neither is your playing on the day. We continue to evolve. So you take all of the good stuff out of that plan and you review what happened in the audition, whether you won or lost, doesn't matter. And then you adjust the plan and you move forward into the next one. And I think this is, for me, is such an important part of the audition process, because if we continue to improve and continue to refine our plan and recognize what works for us, then we have the opportunity. What will happen is we'll run into the right audition at the right time. So, it might not be the Berlin Philharmonic, but it might be the Concertgebouw. It might be the right audition at the right time, that you fit into, which would be great. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Bob.
Well, you also can't. One thing that's not talked about too often is the idea that it's okay to be vulnerable, to be a fallible, vulnerable human being. I mean, without vulnerability, we don't have risk, we don't have love, we don't have all those great things that come as a result of that vulnerability. And I think that when we're listening on the other side, part of what makes us nervous is that we're embracing that in ourselves. I think, wouldn't you agree with that, Andrew, that you can't vanquish that vulnerability? You can use it as a certain kind of fuel for preparation, but I don't think that that we should fight it necessarily. We have to learn to coexist with it. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there are precious few people that have zero self-doubt. And I mean, I can think of a couple of them, but I'm certainly not one of them. But it definitely helps our creative side if we allow that to for us to be vulnerable. That's a great point.
I mean, to use it as when appropriate, and when you're talking about being in really good shape on your instrument, that's different. But we can rely on that once we're in really tremendously good shape leading up to an audition. It's then figuring out the place in the mind for each thing that I've been talking about, like the vulnerability, etc. Like, where does it fall in line as vis-a-vis our music making? I'm sorry if I'm not making any sense. I'm as nervous as though I were taking an audition myself, So, and it also might be heartening to some of you out there to know that, like, a wizened old pro like myself who you must have won every audition. Nope. I fell on my butt so many times in order to get to where I am now. And I started looking at all those failures as just steps in a ladder, all going up, all leading upward. And, at the end of the day, we're all just ordinary, vulnerable human beings. And that's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is really valuable information to know that like all of our IM faculty, all of the principals in the laphil, and pretty much every big orchestra, everyone gets nervous. And I think we all get nervous for performances or certain moments. Auditions are one of those ones that is such an unreal environment that it creates a different set of nerves. But recognizing that and then understanding that, if you get nervous, there are tools that you can use to be able to help this. If you've got a good mental plan, if you're able to channel that energy into a positive energy and focus on the music, focus on the performance, you're still going to be nervous, but you're going to be able to actually produce a really good level of result. I like these stories about Dave Crable. Thanks, Alan. Terrific. Cindy. So it's interesting. There's a comment about our level of ignorance musically compared to those of those on the panel. And I think one of the interesting approaches that we can have in an audition is, this is definitely my take on things, and it's my take on things when I'm performing as well. It's really easy for us to doubt if I have the right musical approach. Has anyone felt that when you're performing? They're like, I'm presenting something, but I'm not really sure if this is actually right. Is this what Brahms really wanted? If we can flip that to like, I'm actually going to convince you that my version is the most interesting thing you've ever heard, it takes that off the table, right? And that actually is a really important thing to think about in auditions. That if you've got a dozen people on a committee, even for an orchestra like the laphil, there are going to be 12 different views on their perfect version of that piece or that excerpt based on their experience.
Every time.
Yeah. And that's for every excerpt. So then how do you get the votes? Well, what I've realized is that the panel actually doesn't really care if you play it their way. They just want to hear it a really convincing, impressive way. They're happy to give up their opinion if what you do is really impressive, because if you show them that you're a great musician and that you have an opinion and that you play at a high level, then they're going to be like, well, when they come and sit next to me, they're going to really be able to adapt to how I play. That's one of the approaches that you could think about. But really the committee is just after someone who's going to be a great musician and has something to say. So if we try and straddle this thing of like, I'm going to try and not offend anyone with my version of playing, you end up not impressing anyone, because the opinion of the people on the panel will be, well, my version's better than this, so I'm not going to necessarily need to vote for them. Whereas if you play in a way that is so convincing and so compelling that they may think, well, actually, that's not how I played it, but I can imagine that this would be a really great version. I'm going to change my mind. That's how you're going to get more votes on an audition panel. So yeah, once you've made a decision about how you want to present your excerpt, and obviously it needs to be based on, logic. You need to actually do some research and listen to a bunch of recordings. But once you've decided on this is the best version that I can possibly produce, commit to that and convince everyone that's going to hear it that it is really the best thing that they're going to hear that day.
Well, sorry, Andrew, it's a little bit like speed dating, and then going from speed dating into a real date, maybe your trial week, and then your relationship, your commitment. So during that speed dating process, you've got to show who you are. You can't hold back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do we have any questions for us?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of questions in the
A lot
chat.
of questions? Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Do you have some planning about like resting hours or diets that may help you get more energy or stay focused before an audition? You talked a little bit about restless nights, but what do you guys do to get rested and prepare?
Bob, do you have anything?
Well, I have the opposite problem. When I get nervous, all I want to do is eat. So Yeah, that's sort of my coping. I try to eat something that's very nutritious the day of, instead of like just reaching for junk. Like I might get steak and eggs or something like that. Something that's very packed with nutrients, so that will carry me through several hours of stress. And oddly, that type of food kind of calms me down more than if I were to load up on carbs. So as far as the other part of the question was about resting, Andrew or Rupal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm a very, I sleep very fitfully, even when I'm calm. So it's like most people idle at about 35 miles an hour. I idle at about 100 miles an hour. So I'm a pretty high strung individual. If I'm getting a really deep night's sleep, something's wrong. Like I'm probably making up for lost sleep. I'll get that occasional night that's like 15 hours. I'll be out, and but I don't think that my resting is particularly that changes so much on the day of an audition. For you, Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, I try to the week before the audition, I try to increase the amount of sleep, and I have a goal of getting 10 hours sleep a day. If I can't get that in over the in the evening, then I can supplement that through naps if that's possible. But there's a lot of research into the advantages of sleep and getting good rest and focus. So it'd be one of the things that I would spend a bit of time to plan for, is to be able to get that rest. Definitely no less than 8 hours, but 8 to 10 hours on the week of an audition. If you can make that a priority, that's going to help your focus and really help your preparation. In terms of food, as I say, I try and carb load 2 days before. So I have like a big pasta meal, something that'll be pretty heavy, and then knowing that the evening before the audition is probably going to be pretty light for me. I don't have a great deal of choice about that because I don't tend to feel very hungry. And on the day of the audition, I just plenty of water and shakes and things like that I can keep down, because it's not something that works for me particularly well.
Andrew, I did want to mention that I consciously do slow my mind down, because my mind is almost always racing, and I will spend conscious time, meditating. And if I don't sleep, at least I'm consciously trying to just slow everything down. And that is one thing that I always do before I go on stage, is I will get into that mindset, just sit in a quiet space. If I can't sit in a quiet space, I'm in a corner somewhere, just putting everything in its right location mentally. And sometimes it's easier to do when there's a lot of chaos going on around you. Like, you can create your own little island. So I find that to be very helpful, very useful.
Yeah.
So we just have a few minutes left here. I think I'll take one more question, but then I see a lot of questions that are actually connected to practice planning, and Andrew will be covering a little bit of that on, what to practice, how to warm up, leading up to an audition, but also day of. So I think we're going to be able to catch a lot of those in the next session as well. But there was one from Ashley that I wanted to bring up. So, do you have to be accepted through the resume round in order to go to the audition, or can you still get invited if you don't get past that first resume round?
That's a terrific question. My suggestion for that is, if you do get a letter that says, I think the LA Phil will write you a letter saying, we recommend that you don't come, which is basically saying that you're not invited. But other orchestras will be a little more blunt than that, and say basically you're not invited, but thank you very much. If it's an audition that you are hell bent on taking, and you really feel as though that's the audition for you, what I would recommend is writing back to the personnel manager and just requesting that you can be put on a wait list should an opportunity come up. I would say, in my experience in 10 years at the LA Phil, there has only been one audition where the wait list has not cleared. So everyone who had wanted to audition could audition. That audition was principal percussion, where they had 9,763 percussionists well, maybe not quite that many, that applied, and we just physically didn't have the time in the schedule, and it was the first principal percussion audition for decades. So, so it was people missed out to audition for that one, but definitely for the horn auditions that we've had, and we've had at least 10, I think, horn auditions over my time. We've always heard everyone who wanted to audition. So that would be my recommendation. Just write back to the personal manager and say you'd like to audition if possible. Yeah.
Andrew, can you not just show up too, even if you've been rejected through the mail process?
It'd be pretty hard for them to turn you away.
I think they're obligated to hear you. I mean, we have all of these sort of smoke screens that get thrown up. Some people give up, and I think technically, if you show up, we'll hear you. We'll make the time.
Yeah.
There we go. Lila's confirmed it. You can take walk-ins. So my last question before we jump to practice planning for both of you is, what's one thing that happens behind the screen that participants wouldn't expect, or that they may be surprised to hear while you guys are on a panel?
Bob?
I don't know. Again, it's like, it's so, I hate to disappoint you. We're all very, very quiet, very respectful. We're rooting for everybody that goes there. We know what it feels like to be on the other side of that screen. So I think there's a certain degree of reverence that we have. You might be surprised at that. We're not like just making paper airplanes and, goofing off back there. We're, it's all business. And, Andrew, maybe it's not the case when you've been on the committee, but
no, it is. I agree. A couple of things come to mind. There's a lot of candy that gets passed around. You got to keep the sugar levels up because that can dip. Everyone.
And by candy you mean alcohol, right? No.
No. And then
just kidding, everybody.
The other thing to give, so for our auditions, when we are behind the screen, so when the screens are up, there is definitely in all the orchestras that I've been in, there is no discussion. It is purely a vote. So at the end of each round where the screens are up, there is no discussion. It's just each panel member has a vote. In laphil, we actually have clickers. So we have a little electronic button, and when we've heard enough of the candidate play, everyone will press their button. When 50% or more of the people have heard enough, then that person will be asked to, will be thanked for their time and leave.
But addressing that really fast, if you are dismissed before you think you should be in an audition, don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. They may have heard enough to advance you at that point. So there's that as well. So,
yeah.
Sorry, Andrew.
No, exactly. Yeah, and so normally discussion will only happen after the finals, and that will be with the music director. But generally, the other thing I would say is if you are going to play on stage before you start your excerpts, make sure that it's something that is that you've prepared and that sounds good and that is short and succinct. If you want to test the room, just do that. It's the one time that you do see the panel break down is when someone comes on stage and plays like their full warm-up routine before the first excerpt. That will it's very entertaining for the panel, but it's generally not going to be very successful for your audition. So just keep in mind, whatever you play on the stage is part of the audition.
Remember to take the wheel off the bottom of the bass before you start playing.
Yeah. And if you're going to tune to the piano, this is another important one. If you're going to tune to the piano, make sure that you know what pitch the piano is tuned to before you tune to it. And tune to that off stage, so that all that happens when you go on stage is you're just matching the pitch of the piano. Please don't really tune on stage. It's just a show thing, because we've seen candidates for horn where like someone has played, the piano's played, we play 442, and they played an A at 438, and then they've adjusted to 444, and then back, and it's been like a 30-second situation of trying to find a pitch. So yeah, be clear. If you're going to tune to the piano, know what the pitch is, tune to the pitch off stage, and then just test it when you get on stage.
All right. Thank you for all of that great insight. And thanks everyone for all of your very engaging questions. I know this is a topic that is on many of your minds and ours as well. As you know, we talked about how the industry is. I don't know, Andrew, if you want to talk a little bit more about kind of the importance of audition preparation right now, right before we jump into practice planning now.
Well, I mean, audition preparation is something that it translates whether you're doing auditions or whether you're doing chamber music performances or concertos or or big performances in an orchestra. It's the same tools. It's just that they're in an audition. You don't have a relationship with your audience before you start, and two, you don't have a lot of time to convince that audience that you're really great. Normally, if you're a soloist and you go on stage, at least some of the audience have heard of you, and they believe that and they bought a ticket maybe to see you. So there's this feeling of mutual joy that you're there. Whereas in an audition, it's not that. You're really starting from zero, and you've got to get to 100 as quickly as you can. So having a clear plan in your audition preparation for me is the big comforting thing, and just focusing on executing that plan. And then knowing that I can change the plan later on is really key.